Okay, let's get started. Cydney, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you and learn more about you. You have such a cool background, so I'm excited to ask you these questions and for students to learn about you too. And thank you to Ms. Armbruster's class for joining us. We're glad you're here. And if you guys have any questions and you want to come off mute at the end, you're more than welcome to do so. I know Mr. Bray's class sometimes does that. So you are more than welcome to ask any questions that you have. But I think we should just go back to where it all started. So take us into your world, who you were, Cydney, when you were in the upper school. What were some of your favorite classes? Who were some of your favorite teachers? Activities, sports, kind of give us a sense of what was going on for you in the upper school.
Well, thanks so much for having me, everybody. It's fun to be back. This is not how I would necessarily want to normally come back and say hi to everyone. And I look forward to, I hope, seeing folks in person sometime soon. I graduated from Country Day in '97, and that sounds like a really long time ago with a different century in front. But I was someone who really liked to maximize learning. I was always really curious. My favorite classes were drawing, painting, photography, as well as physics and bio and French. Ms. DeVogel was there.
Cool.
Ms. Murray was my favorite English teacher. Mr. Gilbert was my favorite French teacher. And I think Doc Freed and Doc Fazio might still be there. And they were my favorites as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Love that. So what kind of activities did you do when you were at school, and what sports did you play?
Yeah, so every moment that I could find, I was in Ms. DeVogel's room drawing or in the photography lab. So any spare moment I could come up with, I would, not feel well enough to do sports. Although I was definitely a basketball player, and I loved volleyball, and I was active, but I was definitely more on the fine arts side. And I also played trumpet my entire time.
Cool. Okay. Actually, Mr. Vogel's daughter, Ann Kingsbury, said to say hi to you today. So she is doing something else right now, but she emailed me before this chat and told me to tell you hi. So.
Oh my gosh, Ann, hi.
Yes.
Let's catch up sometime soon if you're watching this.
Yes. So fun. Okay. So after you graduated from DCDS, you went to BU, which for students out there who are watching or watch back, BU has an excellent school of communication. It's one of the things that they are known the best for. And Cydney, you went to that program. So tell us a little bit about your decision to go to BU. What was it like? And did you kind of have a sense of what you wanted to do, what you're doing basically now, and what you've done for your whole career? Did you know that you wanted to do that and that's why you went to that program?
I had no idea. When I was in high school, I had a set of preconceived notions that were must-haves for me. Looking back, they were somewhat arbitrary. My must-have list was on the map of the US. My school either had to be located in Chicago or on the East Coast, north of DC. DC was okay, or New York, Boston. But really, those were the parameters. I'm not entirely certain why there were those geographic parameters. And I knew that I loved to draw. I knew that I loved the arts and photography. And I also knew that I love science. And so when it came time to looking at programs and how I could marry those things professionally, I was thinking very seriously about medical illustration. So I had to find a program that would allow pre-med as well as communication.
Okay, and if I could just actually quickly pause you right there. Can you explain for people what is medical illustration? Because that is a very niche area and it's very cool. And I would love for people to learn just what that is.
Yeah, so So if you look in your bio textbooks or any of your science textbooks, really, maybe you have anatomy and physiology, you have all these illustrations. A lot of times there's photography. Back in 1997, there were fewer photos because photography didn't have the best technology or
Mhm.
as good of technology as we have today. So more of it was hand drawn. And I was really hoping to go into the space of drawing medical issues, medical journals. How do we come up with the illustrations of what we need to show
Yeah,
that we can't necessarily capture a photograph of?
very cool. Okay, sorry. So I interrupted you. Take us back to going to BU.
Yeah. So I was looking at the geography, and I was also looking at where did Cydney need to grow.
Hmm.
And I knew that when I put my mind to it, I could excel in academics. You read, you study, you learn. It's not that difficult a formula if you're determined and you want to make it happen. You're curious, you seek help when you need it. An area that was a little bit more difficult for me was being independent and on my own.
Okay.
And initially, I had actually accepted the University of Michigan Honors Program,
Hmm.
and it felt too close to home. It felt like it wouldn't really be helping me grow personally how I knew I needed to grow as an individual. So
Okay.
even though college is largely about academics, it's not just about academics. And I recognized that I needed to allow myself to grow beyond the academic world.
Right.
And part of that was learning how to live in a city. I had
Mhm.
never lived in a city like Boston. Boston was very walkable. The Boston University campus was very much a campus in a city. And so it had that wonderful college feel. And then just a block away, we were in the middle of downtown.
Mhm.
And so I felt like that would be very manageable. It would be a city on training wheels for me, if you will.
Right.
I would have a whole bunch of people in my same situation learning about a city just like I was. And I would have an instant group of friends. And so it felt like that was something that would be very manageable. And if I didn't like it, I could always transfer back to Michigan or anywhere else where I wanted. But
Sure.
frankly, after the first week of being there, I loved it and knew there was nowhere else I wanted to be. And as you said, it was the top communication program. And
Yes.
they allowed me to do communication and pre-med at the same time.
Very cool. Okay. So, you're at BU, you're doing all these types of really cool things, and you become a White House intern. So, for students who might not be familiar with this, you can apply actually to Senate and congressional House internships, either through your local congressperson or your senator, but you can also apply to White House internships. And as you can imagine, White House internships are very competitive and difficult to get. So, Cydney, I would love to hear how you decided you wanted to do this internship. You interned in Ms. Gore's office, the office of the vice president. But tell us about how you got this internship, what you had to do. Tell us about what you did every day, and for any suggestions for students who might be interested in getting something like this when they're in college.
Yeah, so the first uh, bit of advice that I would say is that when Country Day gives us a great setup in the sense that you have your senior project. I assume that still exists, where you have a
Mhm.
senior project in
Yep.
May. So that's essentially your first internship. Continue that in college. It doesn't go away after Country Day. Every semester, maybe not your first semester freshman year, but certainly your second semester freshman year, make sure you have internships all the way through. My second internship and really first full-time internship was at NBC in
Mhm.
Burbank.
Okay.
And while I was there, I read the scripts for the upcoming fall shows. And one of those shows was The West Wing. And
Cool.
so I helped launch that from a publicity perspective. And I thought, wow, this is cool. I know this is Hollywood, but maybe there's an element of that is sort of true with the White House. And I started to get excited about the concept of politics, and I'd never
Mhm.
studied politics. Somehow I made it through my entire education to that point. and I never studied US politics. And so then when I was in England studying at Oxford the following semester, I actually learned about US politics from a global perspective, a
Oh,
non-US
interesting.
perspective. And
Yeah.
then I was in love. I knew that I wanted to intern at the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I started speaking to the career counseling folks at the university. So I went to the BU office and I said, how I need to intern at the White House. I didn't tell them I would like to. I said, I need to.
Yeah.
And they said, that doesn't really just happen like
Right.
that. And I said, that's okay. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
And so I kept digging around, and I also researched online outside of BU. And it turns out that Boston U, like a couple of other colleges, they offer a DC program.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's Boston University while you are in Washington, DC.
Yes. The University of Michigan has a very similar program. Yep.
Yeah. And so that was great. That got me part of the way there. That helped me continue my college education while in DC. So I'd be in the right place to do my internship.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, you have to interview for that program. And I learned that there was a not highly publicized White House internship slot. And it wasn't highly publicized because there was only one, maybe two slots available.
Okay.
And it was very, very competitive. And so I actually interviewed for it without realizing that I was interviewing for it. And I had already expressed that I needed to intern at the White House. And so when I passed that toll gate, and they invited me for additional rounds of interviews. And then they eventually selected me for that slot.
So cool. That's amazing. So what was like a day in the life like when you were an intern there?
There was a lot of mail. It is an intern role. And so, yep. You get to open all of the mail that's sent into the White House.
Yeah.
It was really cool. We worked as part of the Office of the Vice President. Our offices were actually in the old executive office building. And I was interning for both the communication director as well as the scheduling director. And the scheduling director controlled Mrs. Gore's calendar as well as the advanced teams. So all of the people who would go and coordinate where she was going to be over the next couple of days and weeks.
Sure.
So I helped write all of Mrs. Gore's speeches and also respond to many of the events that she either would or would not be able to attend.
Got it. Okay. That is so awesome. I love that. I'm sure you could tell us about that for a long time, but it just sounds like such a fun experience. And I also just want to point out to students that Cydney actually still has that White House internship on her LinkedIn. So that just shows you there are certain experiences that you have that you always want to keep because they're so competitive, and it lets other people who are looking at your profile know how legit you are. So that's great. That's so cool. Thank you.
It's also like a mini club because there are very few people. Every year, I believe the number is 400 or 450. Maybe they've changed it now, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 people who have the internship experience. And so it's sort of like this cool club where if you run across someone else who's done it, you can compare notes and see how things have changed, and it gives you that immediate bond. It's nice.
Very cool. I love it. I'm sure you just learned a ton. Okay, so after you graduated from BU, you have had like a lot of really awesome jobs. So can you sort of walk us through how you started with GE and then you were in PR and things like that? So kind of give us a little taste of what each of those roles was like, and then why you decided to make career changes over time.
So I actually never made career changes per se. I always went over the subject matter areas that really appealed to me. The GE program, I knew after the combination of my internships and my academic experiences, in college, I eventually ended up dropping pre-med and picking up business,
Okay.
and also a concentration in political science. And so I knew that I really wanted to work for NBC,
Mm-hmm.
just like I knew that I needed to work at the White House.
Okay.
So NBC, they weren't really offering the jobs that appealed to me as an entry level candidate and someone who had a terrific resume
Mm-hmm.
and was really determined. Very similar to how all of you are, I'm sure, type A personalities, really wanting to excel and be at the top. And so instead of settling for what seemed like not very exciting lower level roles at NBC, I decided to go to the parent company, GE, and look at the executive development programs that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And they have all sorts of programs, whether you're in finance or communication, marketing,
Okay.
HR. And so I accepted the communication program, which again was very competitive. They only accepted 7 people to my class for the
Okay.
entire semester.
Okay. So is this like a
And
rotational program?
it was a rotational program, and every 6 months he rotated business units as well as geographic locations.
Okay.
So I started off in Saratoga Springs, New York, about 3 hours north of New York City. And then while there, I was working on a chemical plant, and they gave me, steel-toed shoes, a fireproof jacket, hard hat, and I wasn't really certain why a communication person needed those things. But I soon learned, as part of my crisis communication responsibilities with the tire fires on the chemical plant, why you might need those things.
Right.
And it was truly trial by fire, and learned a tremendous amount. And soon after, I rotated to Kansas City to the GE Employers Reinsurance business. And there it was after 9/11, and we reinsured the 2 towers as well as the aircraft's engines.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of reinsurance media relation work to do, and again, crisis management around those areas. So that's what I was working on, as well as media training executives.
Okay.
And then I moved to GE Financial after that, and that was based in Hartford. So in Hartford, I was at GE Financial working for an employee benefits service group. So providing insurance to small to medium-sized employers, and building that marketing team and PR team from scratch.
Wow, that's
so
really
from
cool.
there, yeah, and it gave me hands-on experience. I highly recommend those rotational programs after university. They just give you the real life experience that is exciting, and it helps you hone what you're really looking to do. And by the time I finished that, I knew that I still wanted to work at NBC, and it was much easier to go from GE corporate into NBC, as opposed to going from the outside. And so I was able to make that transition, and I stayed at CNBC, gosh, I think for maybe 6 or 7 years. And I managed primetime marketing at CNBC. And there I launched, I helped launch Mad Money with Jim Cramer, and I want to say about 60 documentaries in primetime.
Wow. Okay. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So that was really cool. And at the time when I felt like my career was stagnant and I wasn't learning as much as I wanted to, I really wanted to grow in responsibility. What I was marketing and what I was working on, but I really wanted to take my career to the next level and manage a team and have more responsibilities within the company. And so when a former colleague reached out to me and said, "Hey, I really want you on my team at 30 Rock, come over to corporate with me," I accepted the challenge. And I worked on the communication for the Comcast NBC Universal merger that happened in 2009. I guess it was 2010 and 2011.
Wow.
And so I worked on that from the inside, which is a dream for someone who's working on internal communication initiatives. And I stayed there for about 5 more years, and I oversaw the communication, marketing, and branding for the technology division of NBC. And that includes the TV, film, and theme parks. So that
Wow.
was really, really exciting. And I was working really, really long hours, and it was hard work and really rewarding and fun. It was a lot of fun
Yeah,
too.
yeah, it sounds like it. And one of the things I'm just like hearing you say is it's so interesting too. Like there are certain jobs where you actually just like learn a ton about other areas of business and life. And it sounds like in your roles that you've had, you're not just like doing communications, but like you're learning about like mergers, you're learning about insurance, you're learning about like crisis management. It's just so interesting, like all of the things that you have done and now like have a bit of expertise in from the jobs that you held.
And
So
that's
I
just
think,
it. And that was one of the reasons
yeah.
why I wanted to study communication in college, actually, because I knew that it would give me a technical skill set that would be marketable to employers. And I also knew that communication, which is more along the lines of a liberal arts concept, would enable me to apply that
Yeah.
skill set to any content I wanted, whether it was manufacturing or TV or technology or anything under the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about your company.
Yeah.
So, guys, Cydney has her own company. It's really cool. I believe it used to be called Brand Story 360, and now it's Elbridge.
Yes.
So tell us about why you started your own brand. What's the difference between having your own company versus working for like a giant media company? Would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in 2016, I decided that it was time to stop being married to my job. And I was really interested in focusing on some things for me. Just like we're all in charge of our careers and, how much time we spend with our family.
Yeah.
And we're in charge of how we are as a person and how we're interacting with our communities. And I really felt like I had become a bit too one-dimensional and focused just on career.
Okay.
And so I decided that I would take a self-funded sabbatical for a year and, focus on dating, focus on writing my book, focus on photography, focus on yoga, focus on the things that make me happy, focus on spending time with my family, which I'm so glad that I did all those things. And it gave me the headspace to get creative again and get more strategic. And when a friend reached out to me and she said, "Hey, Cydney, I really need your help at my company, on my team, to help with this communication project. Is this something you can help with?"
Wow.
And I said, "Hang on, yes, let me go start an LLC." And then a couple weeks later, a friend from Philadelphia had reached out to me and she said, "Hey, Cydney, I really want to have coffee with you, but first, I need you to help me with a project." And those companies were Genentech and Comcast, so two Fortune 50 companies, reaching out to me saying they wanted my help. And, a couple lessons there: your contacts, your Rolodex, use them always, whether they're your own or your friends or your parents or your neighbors. Make sure that you stay in strong touch with people.
Right.
And also, you'll always see people again. So always keep, communications open and positive.
Okay. So what do you do? Tell us about some of the consulting services that you do. Like, what are some of the projects that you work on?
So Elbridge is the name of my company, and we help executives take really complicated messages and make them simple.
Okay.
So if you picture something like Microsoft Office 365, I'm not sure if that's what you're using at Country Day these days, or if you're using, if you've ever heard of ServiceNow, there are all these software as a service companies that are really making life easier for companies and schools and all of these different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And CIOs, the chief information officers at companies,
Mm-hmm.
are in charge of buying these programs and saying, this is going to be the strategic direction that we take our company in. And CIOs frequently are incredibly skilled with technology and not as skilled in communication and marketing those concepts to their peers and to their bosses. And they need to get the buy-in and the alignment of their teams. Just like when everyone here has a group project, you know, it's the hard path to try to go it alone and do everyone else's work for them that almost doesn't work, and everyone will be unhappy. We need to get everyone aligned. And so what we do is we help CIOs communicate their messages and get aligned with their peers and with their bosses so that they're able to successfully purchase and enable these technologies throughout the organization. And then once they have the technologies, we help create the communication and marketing plans internally so that employees know how to use the technologies.
Cool. Okay, so you are doing all internal communications, but usually from a C-suite level to employees at the company.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so why does a company sometimes choose to go with you rather than like having their internal team handle something like this?
A lot of times this sounds counterintuitive. A lot of times there's not enough budget.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not enough budget to hire someone full-time or to designate a full-time employee to
sense.
have this as part of the responsibility.
Okay.
So it's less expensive to go and for a 3-month, 6-month, 12-month period, hire someone or a company to help perform this. Also, when there's simply not enough bandwidth, you know, the team is overworked, and sometimes it's a matter of creativity. And when you bring people in from the outside, you have different ideas, fresh perspectives, and it just adds more to the conversation.
I love that. That's so interesting. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, and you're obviously an expert in this, so that makes perfect sense. But so can you tell us a little bit about any of the clients that you currently have right now?
Yeah, so 2020 has been a banner year for Elbridge. Comcast, NBC, the NBA, Cisco, and Genentech are among our clients this year.
Okay, that's so cool and very exciting. Congratulations. That's amazing. Cydney, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are about out of time, but I am so grateful and appreciative to you for spending your time with us this afternoon. This has been so interesting. I'm really excited for other students to watch this back, and hopefully we can see you in person soon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really been an honor, and I hope to see you all in person soon.
Yes, thank you, Cydney.